Hi everyone, my name is Richard Santoro and I welcome you to Third and Zen, the YouTube channel where every week we're sharing a spiritual message to nourish ourselves, heart, mind, body, and soul. First, thank you for stopping by the channel. Thanks for checking out today's video. I do hope this video finds you doing well. I know that this time of year might be a little bit of a challenge for folks. I know any time of year is a challenge for people because life isn't easy. So with that being said, I hope you're taking the time to care for yourself, heart, mind, body, and soul, and perhaps we're all taking care of one another as best we can. If you feel like liking this video, if you feel like sharing it or subscribing to the channel, that is massively helpful and appreciated by me. But either way, thanks for being here. Thanks for being you. Okay, let's take a minute. Let's get ourselves nice and prepared for today's video, today's message. So just take a moment. Take a moment and just breathe. I know I need to adjust my posture a little bit. Just loosen any tension that you might be carrying in your back, your shoulders, your face, and your brow, your jaw, and perhaps just soften. Just be more at ease. Just soften and lean into this moment. And just breathe. Take another breath or two. Just invite ourselves to be here, be present. Invite ourselves to be open. And let's get started with today's message, shall we? Okay, I want you to do me a favor. I'm going to have a visual aid here. I hope it works out well with the video and the camera because, yeah. Do me a favor. Take a look at this. See that? See that? Please forgive the little rip page right there. You see that? This is what we know as Christmas. Merry Christmas. Xmas. Xmas. Just take a look. Just take a look at that. Just absorb that for a moment. Now, let me just ask a rhetorical question, because obviously you can't respond, and maybe you want to respond in the comments, but either way, does this bother you? Does this irk you in any way? Do you see that? Are you slightly perturbed in some way, shape, or form? I ask that because, growing up, this right here, this drove my mom nuts. This drove my mother nuts. She did not like that at all. She refused to write it like that, and she would not allow any of us to write Merry Christmas in this way, or Christmas in general in this way. Now, whether you are like my mom and you have an issue with this or not, there is definitely a segment of Christians out there that do have a problem with the use of Christmas like this, the spelling with the Xmas, Christmas, in the place of the full written word Christmas. There is definitely a segment of Christians who feel that using Xmas, I'll refer to it as Xmas for the moment, secularizes Christmas. There's a segment of people that feel that it takes the Christ out of Christmas, or that it minimizes Christ in the Christmas tradition. But today, I would like to look at it from a different perspective. And I would like to reclaim the tradition that started the use of this, that started the use of the Xmas. I want to hold up another visual aid. See this right here? See that right here? The X with what looks like a P right there and there. This is what's called, and I'm just going to put this down here and keep this here. This is what's called a Chi-Rho, C-H-I-R-H-O, Chi-Rho. And it dates back to the time of Emperor Constantine and the early Christian church around the 4th century. The Chi-Rho, this Chi-Rho right here, is one of the earliest symbols for Christ. And it's one of the earliest forms of what is known as a Christogram. Basically, here's how this works. Basically, it's formed by superimposing the first two capital letters of the Greek word for Christ. We have the X for Chi and the what looks like a P for Rho, R-H-O. X and P, Chi-Rho. And it's done in such a way that it produces a monogram, so to speak, a monogram. Now, while technically this is not a Christian cross, the Chi-Rho did serve. It served to symbolically invoke the crucifixion of Jesus and his status as the Christ, the Chi-Rho. It's a very ancient and important and prominent Christian symbol. I'm just going to put this down here. Now, around the 14th fast forward a little later, around the 14th and 15th century. And some historical records indicate as early as the 1100s, this symbol, the Chi-Rho, this symbol began to be used in conjunction with the Old English word that we get Christmas from, the Old English word Christmas. Basically, the Chi-Rho began to be used simply as a holy, symbolic placement for the word Christ in the term Christmas. It's not a way, and I'm just going to grab these again, bear with me 1 second. This was not, all right, let me get myself quiet here. Let's start. It was not a way of taking Christ out of Christmas, but rather it was just another holy way of expressing Christ's presence in the celebration, recognition, and adoration of Jesus' birth. In its origin, it's not meant in any way, shape, or form to secularize Christmas. Just the opposite. So that's why when we see Xmas, its origins are in this, in the Word, as a symbol, as a presence of Christ in the celebration and recognition of Christmas. So it's not meant to secularize or remove. But, here's a but for us, but that is, let's be a little honest here, that is what happened a little bit, and I'm minimizing that, but a little bit with the term Xmas. It is a little bit what happened, isn't it? Even if some don't fully know the history of the term and the beautiful symbolism of the use of the Chi-Rho, Christians are not completely off base. Christians like my mom are not completely off base in their displeasure with how the term Xmas has become more of a sort of time-saving abbreviation, let's say, than a true Christological symbol. Well, with that being said, today we are reclaiming that tradition. And we are bringing back, right here, right now, go figure, bringing back the original Christmas tradition of the Chi-Rho. And we are reclaiming a piece of our wonderful Christian Christmas history. And that, my friends, is what this message is all about. Reclaiming and redefining our Christmas traditions. Traditions can be a wonderful and lovely thing. As people, as family units, as Christians or other religious or spiritual groups, or as groups in general, we love to embrace and adhere to our traditions. And the Christmas season which we find ourselves in is abundantly full of lovely, unique traditions. Now, again, hopefully we will now look at Merry Xmas in a new, traditional, spiritual, Christ-like way. And this morning, I would also like to introduce a new tradition. I'd like to introduce a new tradition, or to put it better, to reintroduce and reclaim another old Christmas tradition, one that existed long ago. And like the Chi-Rho of Xmas, one that we can fully embrace once again. And that tradition is this, a phrase, an African proverb. However long the night, the dawn will break. However long the night, the dawn will break. With all of our Christmas traditions, the trees, and Santa, and the lights, and eggnog, and Christmas carols, and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and yes, the Chi-Rho, and Merry Xmas, with all of our Christmas traditions. This particular one is the Christmas tradition that I would really like us to embrace today and going forward. However long the night, the dawn will break. Let me explain a little further. Every winter, Christmas arrives, plain and simple. It just does. That's how it works. However long our year, Christmas arrives. And with it comes hope, joy, peace, and love. Or with it, for some, come challenges, difficulties, pain, and sadness. Now, just to go a little deeper and put a pause on that for a moment, The true birth date of Jesus is not known. Some speculate that it is more towards the summer months, so the early church may have placed the Christmas celebration around the time when Jesus possibly would have been conceived. Maybe that's why it was moved. But history seems to indicate that what occurred was this. The church embraced the non-Christian solstice festivals that took place during this winter time of year, and they opted to celebrate Christmas during this time. You see, the winter solstice in our northern hemisphere is December 21st, which is hopefully when I'm dropping this video today, December 21st. But in the original Julian calendar, it was December 25th. And what that actually means is this: however long the night, the dawn will break. As fall turns into winter, our days get shorter and shorter and shorter, and the sun stays out less time, and darkness is longer and longer. And then eventually, the solstice comes, and as of today, December 21st, the cycle switches gear, and the days slowly start to get lighter and lighter with more sunlight. And thus, the intentional placement of the celebration of the birth of Jesus, the birth of Christ, was the winter solstice, a time when much of humanity, depending on where you are in the world, when much of humanity embraces the fact that winter will eventually end. A time when we see that light starts to turn the tide against the dark. A time when we recognize that the birth of Christ, however long the night, the dawn will break. Isn't that just a lovely thought? This is an old Christmas tradition, and I call for us to reclaim it today and embrace it wholeheartedly. Today, right now, December 21st, is the first day when the light stays out just a little bit longer. However long the night, the dawn will break. And every year, per tradition, Christmas arrives, December 25th. However long the night, the dawn will break. That is our tradition. Every winter, Christmas arrives. Every winter, no matter how dark it gets, Christmas arrives. Every winter, no matter how cold it gets, Christmas arrives. However long the night, the dawn will break. Every year, no matter how tough things have been for any of us, for all of us, Christmas arrives. Every year, no matter where we are in our lives or what is going on within us or around us, Christmas arrives. Every year at this time, the days begin to get just a little bit longer with more sun, and Christmas arrives, and Jesus can be born anew into our hearts and into our lives. However long the night, the dawn will break. I like that tradition. I like it a lot. It's an old tradition, and it's a great tradition, and it's one that we ought to reclaim and embrace wholeheartedly. However long the night, the dawn will break. That is Christmas. It arrives in the bleak midwinter and at the turn of the tide, from darkness to more light, from darkness to light. It arrives to remind us the birth of Christ in this world, the birth of light in the darkness. However long the night, the dawn will break. However long the year, Christmas will arrive. It's a great tradition, and I tell you, we're reclaiming it and we're embracing it today once again. And you know, reclaiming traditions can be great. It is great. And to be honest, it follows in the footsteps of Jesus, which makes me like it even more. All throughout Jesus' ministry, he was working fervently to reclaim traditions. He constantly said a phrase, "I know that Scripture says this, but I say this." He constantly repositioned people's approach and perspective to long-held beliefs and traditions. And we could use some of that today, now, couldn't we? There is never a time in our society or in our Christian or spiritual journey when we do not need to stop and reevaluate, reclaim, or redefine our traditions, Christmas, Christian, or otherwise. It was a staple of Jesus' ministry, and one that we would be wise to remember if we are to call ourselves his followers, or even if we do not. Looking closer at this proverb and this Christmas tradition that we're talking about today, it is also a reminder that sometimes we get caught up in the immediacy of our lives. We often don't see the forest through the trees, so to speak. We evaluate things in the immediate, small picture, rather than in the broader, far-reaching picture, bigger picture. What do I mean by that? Let's be clear. Basically, what I am saying is that we can't judge what will happen tomorrow based on what happens today and right now, or when we are in the dark of night, so to speak. However long the night, the dawn will break. The night can be dark and cold and bleak and scary and limiting to our vision and our outlook. But however tough and challenging it is to see from the darkness, the dawn will break, I promise you. It's really a great proverb, but we don't always remember the sentiment of hope when it's dark, do we? And I say that with all love and understanding and empathy and affection because I know it's not easy. And that is why I am stressing re-embracing this tradition. It's a tradition of hope, of faith. It's a tradition that we need to remember during every initial moment of despair and doubt, of pain and loss, of fear and darkness. Let me repeat that. It is a tradition that we need to remember during every initial moment of despair and doubt, pain and loss, of fear and darkness, of anxiety and stress, and all of it. Okay, let me pivot here, pause here for a moment. Let me share a story to illustrate the point that I'm trying to make. This December, like every December, we mark the anniversary of the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor during World War II, December 7th. On the anniversary date, back when I wrote this particular sermon some years ago, on that anniversary date, I watched a great documentary on Pearl Harbor. And this documentary looked at the attack on Pearl Harbor in a moment-by-moment response and perspective from those who were involved. The main players and leaders, the politicians and heads of state and the military leaders. What it emphasized was that when we look back now at history, history tells us how things started, how they played out, and how they ended. One nice, neat little package. But that's not how life works at all, is it? We know that it was the Japanese who attacked Pearl Harbor, and that the United States joined the war, and that eventually the United States and the Allies would win World War II, and that Japan, Hitler, and the Nazis were defeated. We know that now. But in that immediate moment, when Pearl Harbor was being attacked, nobody knew any of that. Nobody knew at the time who was involved, what would happen, or which way was up. They just didn't know in that moment. Adolf Hitler, when he received word that day that the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor, he literally opened a bottle of champagne because he thought the war was over. He was elated. He said that the Japanese had not lost a war in 3,000 years and the United States would be finished within weeks. And President Franklin Roosevelt, he confided in a friend within hours of the attack that he would indeed go down in history as a disgraced president for letting Pearl Harbor take place. But history shows us that both Hitler and FDR were completely wrong in their immediate outlook, and that events would unfold completely different. And my point is this. As Hitler and FDR and that Pearl Harbor event show, we can never judge things by initial events. We can only truly see history after it unfolds. It's hard to see during the night, but the dawn will break. It is hard to see during the night. It is hard to see during the year, but Christmas will arrive. It is hard to see during life's immediate moments, but things can get better. It is hard to see during moments of pain, trials, anxiety, stress, struggle, loss, difficulty. But Christmas always reminds us that dawn will break. The dawn will break. The dawn will break. And the birth of Jesus, Mary and Joseph, at the birth of Jesus, Mary and Joseph were probably just as fearful as Franklin Roosevelt was on December 7th, 1941. They did not know. They didn't know. The birth of Jesus was only the beginning for them. They couldn't see all the way to the end how things would play out. But however long the night, the dawn will break. That is the Christmas tradition that I leave with us here this morning. However dark our days, the dawn will break. Christmas is a time that, however difficult our life circumstances, Christ is born anew into our lives and into our hearts. When it's dark, when initial events hit, when they hit hard, when they occur, like perhaps the fearful unknown of Joseph and Mary with the birth of a baby, like the fear of the unknown for Franklin Roosevelt and Pearl Harbor, when it's dark and fearful, Christmas, beloved, blessed Christmas, is a reminder that however long the night, the dawn will break. So this Christmas, I encourage us to do our best, to do our absolute best, to never judge a pain, a loss, a challenge, a difficulty, a stress, a moment of anxiety by its initial blow. Once again, in the immortal words of Jim Valvano I've mentioned before, in those moments, don't give up. Don't ever give up. I say, look to Christmas. Look to the birth of Jesus. Look to the faith and hope-filled Christmas tradition of, however long the night, the dawn will break. However long the year, Christmas arrives. However long the night, the dawn will break. However long the cold winter night, Christ is with us. Christ is born. Jesus is with you. No more darkness, only light. The dawn will break. Thanks be to God. Amen. And a Merry Christmas to you all when it does arrive this coming Sunday. Okay, my friends, that ends today's message. I dropped this one during the week because I wanted it to be on December 21st because it was in union with this message. So I'll drop something else on Christmas, a little short little something. But again, I want to thank you for stopping by the channel. I want to thank you for checking out today's video. I hope you're doing well. I hope you found this message in some way fruitful or a spot of hope and light for you if you're going through anything. If you feel like sharing this with anyone who you feel might need it or benefit or just enjoy it, please feel free to do so. But either way, I wish you nothing but peace and love and joy on your journey and fellowship with God on your journey. And again, I do want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I thank you all for being here. I love you all. Have a great day. Have a great Christmas. Ciao. Ciao, ciao.